Hey guys, this is Judy and welcome back to my channel, Pink Citrus. On this channel, I will be showing you recipes that I've learned, tweaked, and have come up with over the years. But for today's video, I'm going to be letting Phil, pastry chef, let us know what we're making.
Thank you so much, Judy, and thank you for having me on your channel.
No, thank you for being here today.
Yes, it's very exciting, and I'm actually excited to share with everyone today a formula I've loved over the years. Just in time for this Thanksgiving season, we're going to spice it up not with just a pumpkin pie, but with a pumpkin cheesecake.
Before getting started, I'd like to ask you to please subscribe, like, and share this video. We will also be sharing the full recipe on our website, which will be in the description box below. I will let Phil let us know what our ingredients are for today.
So today we will be using, for our graham cracker crust, is graham crackers, and that's crumbs, and we're gonna melt the butter right here, and sugar. We will actually be adding in some cinnamon into our graham cracker crumbs, and then that'll be for our crust. Now for our cheesecake itself, we're gonna use cream cheese, we're gonna use sugar. Right here we have a blend of cornstarch and bread flour. This is sour cream, our pumpkin puree. We have some liquids here. We have our whole eggs, we have vanilla extract, heavy cream, and of course, once again, our spices. And in this case, we have our cinnamon, we have our nutmeg, and a little bit of pumpkin spice just to offset it a little bit. And finally, we have here our secret ingredient. And although it's not a deal breaker for your cheesecake, it will elevate it to a whole new level. And we will reveal that secret ingredient when this channel hits 500 subscribers, so subscribe now. All right, everyone, so let's get started with our pumpkin cheesecake. So the first thing I'm gonna do here is I'm actually gonna introduce our cream cheese, and we're gonna go ahead and cream our cream cheese. And while I'm doing this, I'm gonna have you, Judy, let's go ahead and melt that butter down. So we want that butter melted for our graham cracker crust, which we'll attack in just a sec. So we're going to go ahead and drop this down, right as so. Wonderful. Okay.
Would you like for me to turn on the oven?
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and set that oven. That way it's ready for when we're ready to go at 300 degrees. Okay. So we're gonna drop our head in here. Clean our hands for a sec. Lock in our mixer, and we're gonna start off with the first speed here to just get the party going. And we're actually gonna kick that up to second speed. There we go. While our cream cheese is creaming right now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna work on this graham cracker crust, and I see we have already melted the butter. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna introduce our sugar right here. And then a little bit of cinnamon. So we're gonna do I'm actually taking off the whole thing here because I'm gonna reach in with the teaspoon. And that looks about right.
That smells so good.
Right? And oh man, just wait till it's all done.
Can't wait.
We'll set this to the side for now. And next up is we're actually gonna mix our ingredients here real quick. Once it looks pretty good here, pretty well incorporated. And once again, as we mentioned in the fundamentals video, is that we want it to look like evenly distributed, right? So no egregious pockets of like, oh, that's all sugar on that side. Now I'm gonna make here a little well, okay? And in the well, if you wanna introduce the melted butter in there. And we are going to just bring it all together until it begins to kind of take shape naturally when we begin to kind of squeeze it together. So.
And why is it important to mix the dry ingredients and the wet ingredients later?
Honestly, it's just a matter of ensuring that proper incorporation happens. Just everything has to follow kind of a certain sequence.
And so that all the powders are evenly.
Yeah, correct. Because you can end up with just kind of like clumps and lumps of ingredients, right? So you get like a pocket of flour or a pocket of sugar. You do not want that at all, right? So as you can see, I'm kind of beginning to squeeze it together here. Just what I'm looking for is, you notice I'm dropping it and it's kind of leaving a little shape here. So I want the butter to be evenly distributed among the dry until I can begin to feel that it's really coming together.
And then may I ask, should we bake the crust before or should we not, or what's the difference?
So for the cheesecake itself, I personally prefer, because the batter is wet, I prefer not to bake the crust before, and that way it's just kind of good to go, and it's not absorbing the pumpkin cheesecake itself. So it looks like this is good to go. And so I'm gonna introduce this into the pan. And before I do that, why don't you go ahead and stop our mixer. And what we're gonna do here is we're gonna actually lift up the tilt head. And I want you to go ahead and scrape around the bowl. So it's very important that we stop often and that we scrape just to make sure everything is being creamed uniformly. That we're not getting any pockets of uncreamed cream cheese. And so that's really with any fat. So once you are good to go, we'll go ahead and continue creaming that for a little bit longer. And make sure you scrape the sides of the bowl. Just bring it all the way around. There we go.
Okay, and I learned to scrape off in the actual, correct me again, on the piece of our mixer. Yes,
so the part she's referring to is the paddle attachments, or the flat beater as we also call it.
Which I did not know.
So it's good to use the flat beater to scrape off instead of the side of the bowl whenever possible. So that's looking pretty good there. So let's go ahead and let's begin to continue the creaming process for a little bit longer, and then we're gonna go ahead and just drop our graham cracker here to kind of begin forming our crust.
Good. Turn this on.
Yeah, go ahead and kick that to the next level up. There you go, and one more. I'm gonna be a little more aggressive. So typically we start off on a slower speed when it's still hard, so we don't overburden the motor on the mixer. And then as we see that it begins to get soft, it's easier to work, then we can kick up the speed because it can pierce through that a lot quicker.
Nice.
So I'm gonna begin dropping in here the graham cracker crust, and there's different preferences. Some folks like more graham cracker crust, some like less. The recipe or the formula that we are doing today is for one cheesecake, but you can adjust to your liking. If you want a thinner crust, you can definitely do that as well. Thank you for that. Okay, so I'm gonna begin kind of just pushing this around.
Because some people don't they like a little bit of extra crust, not just in the bottom, but like a little bit on the sides.
Absolutely. So we're gonna push. What we're doing is we're trying to make sure there is a good layer on the bottom, and then we're pushing the rest to the sides, right?
And if I'm not wrong, you did put some oil on the pan before?
That is correct. So you may have noticed that there was a pan liner on the bottom as well. That's just to help make sure that it doesn't stick to the bottom, but I also do spray the pan itself too. So a little bit of Pam or pan release, there's good generic brands as well, canola oil, and believe it or not, you can actually use oil and oiled pan the sides itself. You don't necessarily need, people think, oh yeah, I gotta get the pan release, gotta go spray. I tell you, I've been in pinches where I don't have it offhand and the store is closed and I gotta get it done. And I will use butter, melted butter. I'll use it because in essence you're using a fat or oil to kind of lube up the sides.
Nice.
So as you notice, it's beginning to look pretty nice here. I'm packing it all in now, right? I'm just kind of turning the pan and just making sure that the sides look good. So this crust is going to be very, very, very tall from what I'm looking at right now, with a nice bottom at the bottom. So it's going to be nice and tasty.
But when I did have a question on the cream cheese,
yeah,
should this be put in here right away after taking it out of the fridge, or should I let it sit for some time before?
Yeah, so when it comes to like any fat, to be honest with you, that you're about to cream, generally speaking, you want it to be at room temperature, just to make it easier on a mixer to begin creaming it, right? Because ultimately it's about softening it up and making it ready, right? Okay. To be able to work with and introduce ingredients into it as well. So I'm almost happy with this, and it sounds like.
Should I stop it or?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's actually when it begins to get cream, it kind of does this little sound that you probably heard right now. So you can actually stop it now. Lift up that tilt head, and then we will go ahead and scrape, scrape, and we can actually introduce our sugar now into there.
Okay, should I put it as it's mixing, or can I just put it in there now?
You can actually do both approaches, and We'll go ahead and we'll sprinkle it in while it's going at the lowest speed.
Is there a difference if I don't pour it in? If I pour it in now versus when it's mixing?
I personally like to sprinkle it in while it's mixing, just to help it incorporate right away and begin to distribute that across.
Gotcha. So yeah, I'll definitely pour it as we're mixing.
As you prepare that and get going. A fun fact about graham cracker, I'm not sure if you knew about this about graham cracker, but it was actually invented by a Presbyterian minister back in the 1800s.
Nice.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Did not know that, yes.
But it's a fun fact.
It is a fun fact, and it was actually part of a special diet that he had developed. So.
A diet? Who has a diet for a crust?
Yeah, it was the up and coming vegetarian diet.
Interesting.
Yes.
Well, we should eat more like that now.
I don't know. I'm kind of a meat eater myself, so
yes.
I do like my steaks. So go ahead and begin sprinkling that in.
Is this fine, or should I pick up the speed?
Oh, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, first speed is fine as you begin incorporating an ingredient. The reason why, if it's going too fast, it might get all over the place.
Okay.
You know, it gets all over yourself. I'm just gonna squeeze by you here. And as you're doing that, sprinkling in, I'm gonna bring on over here our next ingredient, because once that's incorporated, we'll take it into the next step. Okay, perfect. Now you can kick up the speed.
And I see that the cream is changing.
Yeah, so one thing you'll notice is that as we are incorporating ingredients, the consistency begins to change, right? So now the cream cheese is looking much more smooth. Mm-hmm. Now here's a fun fact, right? If you were to swap out the granulated sugar for the powdered sugar, you get something more now of a cream cheese icing or frosting consistency.
Would that work for a pumpkin roll by any chance?
Possibly, but it's all about the ratios, because the more dry you increase, in this case the sugar, it'll stiffen up more and more.
Gotcha.
So you want to pay attention to the formulas out there for icing. All right, this is looking good. Go ahead and stop it and scrape. It's looking fantastic in there.
Colors. So I see that it's not even yet, but this is why I believe it's so important that we clean off everything frequently, right?
That is correct. So that's why we scrape, and if you have a standing mixer, instead of doing the tilt head, we would drop the bowl and we would scrape. Notice another fun fact is the first cheesecake was first created in Greece. They have actually excavated molds for cheesecakes dating about 2000 BC.
Nice. I actually thought it was from New York. Just because you hear all the time, like, I like New York cheesecake.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So it wouldn't be the first time. A lot of folks, they think, oh, the New York cheesecake, right? Because everybody hears about that. Mm-hmm. But it's actually been around a lot longer than what people realize. Let's go ahead and kick it up.
Okay.
And one last time around, let's do that. Let's go really aggressive. There we go. So we're able to kick it up very aggressively because it's already creamed. It's not straining the motor. And we just want to quickly just get everything incorporated, and boom, let's go on to our next step, right? So it's looking pretty good there.
And smelling really good.
It's smelling good. I'm almost tempted to just kind of like stop the mixture and put the finger in there. Don't do that at home,
no.
Right? And take a little taste of roux. So we're gonna stop it now, and we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna introduce our first bit of dry. So this right here is our cornstarch, which is a thickener, right? So it's gonna help thicken and give some shape to our cheesecake, as well as the bread flour. So we don't introduce too much, but just enough to give us some structure. So let's go ahead and drop that in there now. And I'm actually going to kick it up on slow speed. I'm going to kick it up a notch a little bit here. What's interesting now about cheesecake is that in Greece, it was considered a good source of energy. As a matter of fact, athletes in the Olympic Games of 776 BC had cheesecake as part of their...
I think I need quite some of that.
Right? Some energy. So, who says cheesecake is bad for you? It's good for an athlete. All right.
Especially, I think, with pumpkin. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to pick that up. And as I'm doing this right here, Judith, why don't you go ahead and begin setting up our cheesecake pan.
Okay.
And what we're gonna do is we're gonna prepare for a water bath, folks. So what does that mean? That means that we are going to introduce our pan into another pan, but we're gonna set, in order to prevent any water from getting into our springform pan, we're going to wrap it up with aluminum foil. So Judy is gonna demonstrate that for us right now.
Okay. So, I hope I'm learning from the master.
The master, huh? Man, I don't know how to react to that.
Hey, I've never myself worked with a pastry chef, so to me, it's the master. Okay. Is this looking good?
So one of the things that we need to watch out for is you notice over here it's too low. And remember, we're gonna introduce water, so we don't want water seeping over the top, right?
Gotcha.
Of the foil. So see how that's so low? And if that water is gonna go around midway, we want that foil to be above the midway.
So should I replace that, or can I just put another one?
You can just put another one. I mean, why waste it? And the wonderful thing is that if you're careful about it, you can actually reuse these as well. You know, just kind of pull away and add into another pan in the future as well. So this is looking pretty good so far, and what we're gonna do next is we're gonna introduce a little bit of our sour cream to give it to help out our cheesecake. All right, so now I'm gonna introduce the sour cream.
Like, please try this at home. Okay, how does this look?
It's looking good. Are you happy with it?
Yes.
If you're happy with it, then it's good to go. Right? If you,
I am, because I'm learning.
Right. And so the best thing to do is, like, if you are in doubt about it, then make sure you're not in doubt.
Okay.
Yeah, the last thing you want to do is put in all that effort and only to have your product ruined.
And why are we doing it in the type of bath that you mentioned?
Yeah, so we are doing it in a water bath because what it does, it helps to hydrate the top. As the oven is heating up the water, it kind of creates a little bit of that steam around the top and keeps it hydrated, keeps it from cracking, keeps it nice and tender.
Good to know.
Yes, it is a lovely thing. All right, so while that's being introduced, we're gonna begin preparing our pumpkin puree. So what we're gonna do with the pumpkin puree is gonna add in the spice in here, right? So for our cinnamon, and if you wanna do the honors, do a very good teaspoon of that. So in a prior video, we talked about splitting hairs, right? So 1 teaspoon, a little bit more than that, because the formula is calling for 0.19 of cinnamon.
Is that good?
That looks good.
Okay, perfect.
And so 1 teaspoon is roughly 0.16 of an ounce. And so if I'm going for 0.19 of cinnamon, if I'm a little bit over the top of my teaspoon, I feel good about it. The next thing we're gonna introduce is also the nutmeg. And for that, we're gonna use just a little bit. It's only 0.05 of an ounce, right? It sometimes doesn't even move the scale. So what we're gonna do is, that looks fantastic. Throw some of that in there. It smells fantastic.
It sure does. Great. It smells like holidays.
Put on that Frank Sinatra too. All right. Now, finally, we're gonna offset some of the flavor. You can choose what you want to add as well. You don't have to be restricted to just these spices, right? Sometimes a little bit of clove or a little bit of allspice is fantastic as well. In this case, we're gonna introduce some pumpkin spice.
Let me just say that, because I know even I got confused. It's allspice, not Old Spice.
Not Old Spice, that's right. Right, okay. If you are looking in your restroom for your spices, not good. So
that's not a good thing.
Absolutely. So I'm actually going to stop it, because one thing, I don't want to overdo it. I don't want to incorporate too much air. The last thing you want to do is incorporate too much air into your cheesecake mix. Not a good thing. All right, so let's go ahead and actually we're going to sprinkle it in. I'm not even going to use a teaspoon. Just sprinkle it a little bit of in there. And here we go. That looks good.
It smells good.
Yeah, and so a little bit later, we're gonna be kind of taste testing it a little bit just to make sure we're happy with the flavor. So don't think that this is the deal breaker, right? So let's go ahead and add that in there. it smells great. All right.
I personally love to see the change of the color from that cream to with that pumpkin. Oh yeah, I love the, especially with cooking, come on. It's like, I just love the combination and the mixture it gets after.
Yes, honestly, pumpkin cheesecake is, I'm a fan of cheesecake, period. But it's one of my favorites. Fell in love with it when I started kind of developing and working with it and looking for the right way for the holiday season. So while it's doing that, Judy, let's go ahead and let's combine our liquids. So we're gonna combine our vanilla extract with our whole eggs, our secret ingredient, and our heavy cream as well. Okay, this is looking good. We're getting very close. So I'm gonna kick it up a little bit. Okay, let's open it up. So another fun fact about cheesecake in the Greeks, they actually sometimes would use it as a wedding cake.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think some people still like that just because they're not such big cake fans.
Yeah, it's a great option as well. But you have to think that once upon a time in Greece, you know, they wanted a wedding cake, it was gonna be a cheesecake. That's right. So popular. There we go. Scrape, scrape, scrape. I still saw some white towards the bottom, which means it's not fully incorporated. So I'm just gonna make sure it just fully incorporates now. So when I'm scraping, I'm looking at the bottom. I gotta make sure that the bottom ingredients are coming to the top, right? So what we're gonna do right now is gonna introduce the rest of our liquids, get that done, and why don't we go ahead and bring up our pan as well that we're gonna use for the water bath. The water we're gonna introduce once it's inside of the oven, just so we make sure we don't spill or make a mess as well. Okay, so let's check one more time. Never underestimate the value of a good spatula. I'll tell you, folks. You know, the terrible thing is when you're making, you know, just large quantities of batter and you have a short little spatula, so no way, your hands are gonna end up inside the batter, guaranteed.
Yeah. So make sure to get a big one, which I don't think it's really easy to find one in a local store. We actually had to find one on Amazon.
Yeah. So yeah, typically there's specific supply stores where you can find these spatulas, and they're fantastic. Never underestimate the use of it. So now I'm gonna one more time take it for a spin, and I'm gonna begin slowing down. I'm gonna begin introducing the liquids, and that's gonna take us to the point where we're gonna pour the batter into the pan, and we'll be good to go. And we'll put it into the oven. Okay. We typically do like half or thirds, and I know that you had asked me, why did we do half or thirds? Why can't we just put it in all at once? And once again, that's just to make sure that it's incorporating properly, that it's homogeneous, just coming together. Because once again, if you just introduce too quickly, you'll have pockets of unincorporated ingredients. Oh my God, so lucky. All right.
That's looking nice and fluffy.
Okay, here we go. And then just a little more. Let's do the rest of that in there. Let's go ahead and take that away. So here's another fun fact for you about cheesecake. So you did mention earlier about New York cheesecake, and the New York version was actually made by a gentleman whose last name was Reuben, and he actually is the same guy who made the Reuben sandwich. Well, we had some butterfly. The Reuben sandwich. So I thought that was interesting.
I've never heard of a Reuben sandwich.
You never heard of Reuben sandwich?
Nope.
Oh, child, you're deprived. All right, leave a comment below if you have heard of the Reuben sandwich and if you like it or not.
Never heard of it, but I'd like to try it.
All right, so this baby is almost ready to go. We're gonna pour it into our springfold pan, and then we're gonna pop it into the oven. So the amount of time we're gonna throw into the oven for is gonna be about, I always like to start off with 60 minutes. More than likely it's gonna go longer than that. I do that because ovens may vary as far as the way they retain heat, the temperatures. So although we are setting it at 300 degrees, we wanna be checking up on it about every 10 to 15 minutes after the 60-minute mark. And there's some sure signs of doneness that we look for once we hit that mark. So this is looking pretty good. One more spin or so. Want all the air out. By the way, air inside of a cheesecake batter, if I hadn't mentioned it before, is bad. Creates cracking. You do not want air inside your cheesecake batter. Okie dokie.
No.
So that is looking pretty good here.
I'm gonna take that.
There we go. Okay. So now we're gonna pour in our cheesecake batter.
Oh, that looks so good.
Right? I'll tell you. I'm gonna pour it in the middle. I like to pour it in the middle so it kind of distributes to the sides evenly. Okay, we'll set that aside now. Now what I'm gonna do here is I am going to just shake the pan a little bit. What I'm trying to do is get the air bubbles out and just to see and assess how it looks like. So I've seen already some air bubbles pop out.
I did not know that that was actually something that would come out. Like, especially by you doing that, like, I didn't know that that was possible.
Yeah. And for those of you watching, you probably noticed there's some air bubbles that are popping. Okay. And I'm gonna leave it as is, but if you have like a toothpick or anything like that, you can pick and pop those bubbles as well. And that's what you would do as well.
Will they finish coming out in the oven with the heat? So?
Yeah, they may or may not. Just depends on how your batter is. And so we'll go ahead and leave this as is, and then we'll see our final product at the end. All right, so let's go ahead and introduce this pan into the oven.
Get on this side.
Okay. And then if you want to show the audience our water.
Back here. Will we be pouring all of it, or should I pay attention to the...
I'll pay attention to the level. So we want to make sure that typically about 1/3 of the way works for me. So go ahead and begin pouring that in there.
Just let me know when to stop.
Oh, I think you got this, grasshopper. Let's see here. Yeah, that looks about right. Okay?
Perfect.
So we're gonna pop that in there. Let's go ahead and set our timer for 60 minutes.
Also known as 1 hour.
Yes, ma'am. So here we have our pumpkin cheesecake. Now, some things to note is that when it's time to pull it out of the oven, let it sit for about an hour with the door open. That way it's not shocked by the changes in temperature, and that way it can settle nice on the top as well. After that, you can transition into putting it into a freezer or the fridge and let it sit. Then you can unpan it with ease and have your final product.
Okay guys, this is our final product for our pumpkin cheesecake, and thank you once again, Phil, for coming and showing us this beautiful recipe, which I personally am gonna continue to make.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. And don't forget that once we hit 500 subscribers, we're gonna release that secret ingredient.
If you really enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and share. and we will see you beautiful people on the next one. And slap that like.
Slap that like.